Ghosts in Us contains serious and sometimes disturbing events and is not suitable for all audiences. Viewer discretion is advised.
It had the crying boy painting.
Her imaginary friend as a kid was a demon.
I looked that thing in its eyes and it changed me forever.
I absolutely believe it was like a demonic presence.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Ghosts in Us podcast. As always, I'm Blaine and my co-host Taylor once again on Zoom.
Yeah, hi.
Yeah, hi. That's how she starts it off. But no, Taylor, tell us, who do we have today?
So we have a special person named Mitch Goth. So he is an author of crime thrillers, adventurous novels, drama, young adult fiction. He's a paranormal investigator, and he is a head writer and researcher for Haunted US, which I've personally visited this website so many times when trying to find places to investigate in the Midwest. That's how I actually found Broadhead. And now that place we absolutely adore. If people don't know what Haunted US is, it's a dedicated team of researchers from varied backgrounds who have years of experience as paranormal investigators that travel and gather paranormal claims of many places and their history, and then they share the information on the website. It's an extremely useful website. So if you are an investigator or you just want to read up on some spooky stuff, you definitely should check out the site, and I will link it on this episode. But yeah, this is Mitch.
Hi, thank you. I'm very happy to be here, and very happy that you find so much to love about the website. It's a great collaborative effort from a lot of different people who put really their whole heart and soul into it. And it's the whole goal of Haunted US when we got started was to give paranormal investigators and enthusiasts out there a really stellar one-stop shop kind of resource for all the history and claims, all the context they could need about visiting a haunted place and making the most out of their ghost hunts or tours or whatever they're doing there. So it's just fantastic to hear from people who are getting exactly that out of it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I have a question. How many people that's part of the Haunted US team travel to find this stuff?
So that's it's kind of a multi-tiered response, but we're publishing new content all the time. We do one new location on the website every week, and that pretty much doesn't stop. We have a lot of travel that's got to get done, of course, 52 each year minimum. So I'm out there traveling when I can. The website's founder and photographer, videographer Brandon is out there very, very, very often traveling to farther reaches of the United States, out to the west, out to the east, down to the south, really filling out the U.S. in Haunted U.S. A good few of us are based in Wisconsin, and most everybody is based in either the Midwest or New England. So we really want to expand our boundaries, and so a lot of us are traveling at pretty much all times. We have the folks in New England travel a good deal. We get some New York coverage there, which is great. But yeah, we're traveling collaboratively, actually going on ghost hunts, and then we're traveling individually, going from place to place to get as much photos and research, history and interviews from as many haunted places in the country as we can.
It sounds like that's so exciting, but also exhausting.
That's a fantastic way to put it. During one trip we did, Brandon and I went on an excursion through Indiana, and that ended up being 13 stops in 2.5 days, I think it was. We did some investigations, some actual investigations on our journeys, which was fantastic to do. We got a lot of tours, a lot of interviews, a lot of background to a lot of different places. But it was, wake up at 7 a.m. and go to sleep at 2 a.m. having filled in, almost a dozen places in a single day sometimes.
Oh my goodness. Like Blaine just came back from an investigation.
Yeah, and I'm exhausted right now.
Yeah.
But how do you gauge your time at these places if you're hitting like 12 or 7 to 12 a day? How do you go in and you like contact the owner or whoever is the caretaker and just maybe spend like an hour or two in there, or like how do you go? How are you fitting 12 in a day?
Yeah. So it comes down to a lot of planning, of course, but we do make God laugh a good deal with our plans. They often go awry in some very, very, very fabulously interesting ways that make them just interesting stories in and of themselves. So I can never be mad when our plans go awry. But we're planning our trips, whether they're individual or collaborative, months in advance most of the time. And pretty much we keep our itinerary down to the minute if we can. So we know exactly what time we're going to wake up on a day a month or two from now. We know it's going to take exactly this amount of time. Fingers crossed, it's going to take exactly this amount of time.
What time you stop to go to the bathroom?
Yeah, to get from point A to point B. And then when we stop at places, we already have a gauged idea of how long can we spend there and how much time do we feel like we need to spend there. Because a lot of places out there have a lot of research that can be found by a good deal of digging through the internet, of course, and then reaching out to people who are known resources online and getting interviews through Zoom like this, and getting a lot of preliminary research done. So we don't really need to spend too long there to get the picture, because the picture's kind of already filled out. So we want to, by the time we get to a place and do interviews and speak to the proprietors there, it would be a lot of clarifying what we already know rather than going in cold, which helps keep a lot of time in our schedule. But every once in a while, we will feature a place that doesn't have that kind of resource. And I feel like that is the most important place that we can feature, because it would be a lot of originated research and a lot of information that people haven't seen before about a place nobody's heard of before. And so those will take a lot more time. Those we will need to know that we need to stay at a place and really speak to the proprietors, as well as visit local museums and historical societies that might have sources about a place's history, maybe some names to connect to possible hauntings. When we're doing a trip where it's a dozen places in a day, it's very down to the basically second how we know we're going to stay in a particular place. We booked an investigation here and it's going to be at this time, and we have this tour, we're going to speak with this owner of this place at this time. But other times we have the opportunity to be super deliberate about it, to really uncover a lot of good information about up and coming or new location. And Broadhead Manor is in fact a very good example of that. Broadhead is not too far from where I live in South Central Wisconsin, so it was pretty easy to visit over there. So I spent a full day prior to our actual first investigation there at the Historical Society and the library, speaking to people who used to work there, speaking to people who went to school there, getting the names of people, getting what room belonged to what teacher, what they taught, how long they worked there, and just so much contextual information that can really impact the value and direction of a paranormal investigation that other people do. So, it really depends on the schedule that we're trying to keep. But in short, it really comes down to planning and knowing what needs to be done well ahead of time.
Can I ask, how do you even start to begin finding places? I know word of mouth, internet, blah, blah, blah. Oh, this place may be haunted. We'll go and research it. But how do you guarantee that you're traveling far enough? You're traveling far. How do you guarantee that it is a place that you could put on your website?
So preliminary research really helps with that. Calling folks who have stories and seeing how fleshed out those stories can be. Because a lot of ghost stories out there, some places will have paranormal claims, but it will come down to, a few here and there. Somebody heard footsteps 20 years ago once. And, it's not to say those stories don't have value. They certainly do. But, to write an article on a place, you need a certain ceiling of the amount of claims and the amount of history that's available. And I always do like to dig in and find what isn't currently available and make it available. But a lot of preliminary research to see more than just whether a place has claims. The specificity behind those claims isn't really important. So instead of just there are footsteps sometimes, where in the building are there footsteps? How often are they heard? If they're in a hallway, that makes sense. But if they're in a room, whose room was it? Why would someone be walking in there so often? The kind of stuff that really adds meat to a ghost story. If there's any of that meat already there, it's a very positive sign. Because that means something has been happening for long enough to build that kind of snowballing lore.
Yeah.
And in my experience, if I find even one story like that, there are probably a dozen more that I can't find currently, that when we go there and I ask the person at the front desk or the tour guide, have you ever had a haunted experience here? I'm going to get about 12 more of those stories. So it's looking for the right seeds and preliminary research to know that there's more promise there than even what Google will tell you.
So when you're going to a place, Mitch, like let's continue to use Broadhead as an example, because that space is so big and it's got 3 floors, it's got different classrooms, different areas. Even Bill, when we were talking to him when we went a couple years ago, he said, if you think you can investigate the whole building in one night, you're kidding yourself. How do you go about doing your investigation? Like, how do you go about picking the spots you're going to sit in and how long you're going to sit in those spots to kind of see what kind of activity you're going to get?
Yeah. So a place like Broadhead, it's always down to the research that is done beforehand, which is a major reason why I started working with Haunted US, to be an easy way to provide that research that I'm always looking for when I start an investigation. Because a lot of times, unless you're the first people to investigate a place and you're really going into uncharted waters, there's a lot of resources you can find out there about what the hotspots are, what happens. And in Broadhead, there had been a couple years of investigating before we stopped in to do our investigation for our article. So there were some existing reports already, particularly around the boiler room and the old workshop nearby. And so we knew we wanted to focus some time on that. And we heard some stories directly from Bill on the morning of our investigation about activity he experienced on the 3rd floor, the ghostly handprints up on the ceiling in that one classroom. So we wanted to set up cameras in there in that hallway. The 2nd floor hallway, when we were there, for those who have never been to Broadhead Manor, currently the 2nd floor hallway is split down the middle by a private space used by the owners. But when we were there, they were still at the very early stages of building that. Right. So the 2nd floor hallway was still fully, one end to the other was clear and open. So we had some cameras down there because, importantly, people had said that there were shadow figures that they could see in that hallway. And while we didn't capture it on the video feed, we did see possibly some of those shadow figures while we were there, which is always pretty neat. So it really comes down to what has happened to people who are already there, investigators who have already had the opportunity to go there. But in Broadhead's case, more specifically, it also came down to a lot more than that, because there was one story that predated Broadhead Manor as a business concept. Back when the building was still Broadhead Middle School, I spoke to an old high school teacher of mine who went to Broadhead Middle when they were a child, and even then they harkened back to their playground days, and they had a popular story at Broadhead Middle was of the ghost of Carl Pfisterer, the old principal and superintendent. And that story has been around for generations and generations. And so I really had an opportunity to speak to people who have been around this building for decades and known about this ghost story in particular for decades, and really had a lot of information going into it. Because a lot of what people say about Carl Pfisterer's ghost now is that he makes footsteps around the old principal's office. But hearing so many different stories throughout people's experiences over the years told us that you could probably find old Principal Pfisterer pretty much anywhere in the building.
Yeah.
So anywhere we went, we were trying to contact him. So yeah, that's just the long short version of what goes into the planning of our
That's
investigation.
awesome. I was just really curious how, like, if you go to a spot. Yeah. So no, that was well answered. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
So, do you have a place that like affected you the most when investigating?
Yeah, probably the first place I ever investigated, and that is a place that is unfortunately not existent anymore. And yet another reason why I got really involved in Haunted US was this place that used to exist was demolished without any real record for anybody to find about its claims or its paranormal history. So not long after the building disappeared, so did many of the ghost stories. So that's what another reason I'm doing this is to kind of prevent that. So when places ultimately disappear, like say Bobby Mackey's, those ghost stories can stick around with a record of some kind. And that place, it was an old restaurant in Beloit, Wisconsin. It used to be a private mansion a long time ago, but it was a restaurant for many years before it closed in the early 2000s. And I first investigated there in 2009, and it's a place that has had far more activity than I think many other places I've been to. In particular, EVPs. You could capture probably an EVP a minute was around the average there.
That's crazy.
It was strange when it was anything else. It was crazy. And aside from that, some of the most solidly unexplainable activity I've ever experienced happened there. Like the very last time we investigated it before they tore it down, it was about 3 days before they tore it down. And some crews had come in and taken it basically down to the studs inside, and they had physically removed the whole power line from the street to the building. So there wasn't any power at all. But in the midst of our investigation, one of the kitchen fluorescent light fixtures started flickering and came on.
That's
and
nuts.
We had been there enough, and that power line was always a problem because there was an overgrown tree around it. So when we got there, one of the first things we noted was how weird it was with that not being there anymore. And so there was no physical way for the building to have power, and yet for a moment it did.
That is such a cool experience.
Cool.
Yeah, and there's I don't know what building's there now, but they paved it over and built like a bank or something, and I like to say it's probably the most haunted bank in Wisconsin because of the building that used to be there.
Wow. I have I have a question that feels probably more opinionated, and if you choose not to answer and you say no comment, I completely understand. How do you feel about spaces that are investigated by hundreds, if not thousands, of different paranormal investigators, ghost hunters, YouTuber, however you want to go about it. And the place is known as probably one of the most friendliest spots to have spirits. Like, it's kind, it's loving. The spirits are nice and playful, only to get bought out by certain entertainment YouTubers and then get labeled as it's a demon infestation. It's
Right.
full of demons. There's a certain school I'm thinking of right now who got bought out, and they don't like to acknowledge the fact that hundreds, if not thousands, of investigators have come in and had positive experiences because they only want it to be known as now it's the most demonic school in the Midwest.
Right.
If you choose to say no comment, I completely understand.
My personal opinion there is the winds of capitalism sometimes blow some unfortunate places. And sometimes it's about, what sells, what can be sold at what ticket price. Everything is worth what its purchaser will pay for it. Even schools out in cornfields. And it all goes back to the reasons I got involved with Haunted US is yet another reason for that is to provide information that achieves a standard that I haven't written down, but I call the reasonable merit standard. It's hard to describe, but you know it when you hear it. And it's the kind of information that comes from valuable sources that can be traced. And a lot of times it's harder to find information of reasonable merit than it should be. And part of the reason that is unreasonable information often floods the zone, muddies the waters, if you will. And it's easy to make up a story. It is fantastically easy to make up any story about any place, anywhere. And that's pretty much all there is to it. There's research is work. Establishing lore is a natural process. But it's a natural process that's enticing to try and reproduce artificially. And so, it's probably going to keep happening to other places here and there. The stories are probably going to vary a little bit, but ultimately it's going to be the same amount of muddying the water as, unfortunately, there's always been in the world. And that just makes the job of the dedicated paranormal researcher all the more important.
Thank you. That's probably the most detailed answer I probably could have ever have asked for. I like that a lot. No, seriously, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Blaine, do you have any questions you want to ask, even though you just asked that one?
She put me on the spot. Why don't you? I don't know. Like, is there a reason you got into this? Like, did you have like an experience? You're like, I really want to look into this, or was this always just like a fascination thing?
It wasn't always a fascination at all. I wasn't the kind of person who started watching Ghost Hunters one day and got really into it, or started watching Ghost Adventures one day and got really into it. In fact, it was a simple matter of likely just down to chance that I got into the paranormal. I was 14, and my family moved into a new house, a few houses down from a friend of mine from school whose mother was a paranormal investigator. So after hanging out for a few months with my friend down the block, eventually, got around October, and they were like, "You want to go ghost hunting with us?" And so we went out to that old restaurant building I was talking about, and I had my first unexplained experience out there, and it's been a top-notch interest and driving passion ever since, for probably a few different reasons, I would have to say.
It's awesome.
That's great.
That's really cool.
Yeah, thank you.
when I was just trying to like do a little more research on like the website and you and just everything involved, I noticed that Haunted US has a YouTube channel,
Yeah.
and they just started posting podcast type videos talking about different locations and their haunted history. What kind of started that interest? Because it only started like a few months ago or a year ago.
It did, yes. It was a project that we've had going for a while in the background, trying to come up with a good original angle for it, and find some new members of Haunted US to really expand our boundaries there. Because for a while there, it was just Brandon and I doing all of that work, maintaining the website, writing articles, getting photos, running our social media. And so we had a lot of ideas for additional projects, but we were at the limit of what two pairs of hands could lift. And so ultimately what we were waiting for there were ideal additions to Haunted US who were great podcast hosts. And we happened to recently encounter the perfect group of podcast hosts out of a little town in Pennsylvania known as Pittsburgh. And it was great to connect with them. They have a lot of the same passions for the paranormal that we do, and they ran a couple of other good projects, and they still run a great project called Paranormal in Pennsylvania. It's another podcast just focusing on pretty much spooky stories in Pennsylvania, and the quality of their work was really top notch. And so we got in contact with them, and they were interested in working with us. And the outcome of that is very new. I want to say it started in either November or October, a new podcast called Haunted Atlas that pretty much is a podcast version of the kind of information you can see on Haunted US, the website. A lot of that detailed history and a lot of ghost stories about all the places.
I think that's going to go super well for a lot of people. Just
Absolutely.
like sitting there listening.
Yeah, and we're hoping so. I know a lot of people like audiobooks rather than sitting down and reading a book, and I feel like Haunted Atlas is pretty much the audiobook version of Haunted US, the website. So yeah, I'm hoping a lot of people will enjoy it.
Yeah, I'm trying to like think of the places that I actually used the website to find. Like, I know Broadhead was one. I think the Cheney Mansion might have been one. There's more. I just can't think of it. But like,
the Cheney Mansion's a great place. I can't recommend that place enough.
We had so much fun. That was like the first investigation we had. That was the first investigation that we had where I was just like, bye, and running through the building, enjoying my time. Blaine,
I'm
that
getting
was probably
scared.
the first time. Yeah.
Run right and center.
It was so fun though.
It's a fun house to explore and investigate for sure.
No, it is cool. I do want to go back.
Redeem yourself.
Redeem it. Puff up
Hopefully
my
nothing
chest.
too scary.
No, nothing bad at all. It's just I didn't expect it to be like with me the entire time.
It was really focused on
I'm
him.
in the basement by myself, and stuff is going off around me. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, all right, Taylor's up in the kids the now that they have like the kids room or whatever, and nothing's happening. I go in the kids room that leads into the attic, and I'm all of a sudden I'm getting told to move out of the way because I'm in the way of the servants who are walking up and down the thing, and then I'm hearing footsteps on the stairs. I'm like, why is this happening when I'm in the room? Why can't it happen when it's just her? But yeah, no, I was
so fun.
Like that. I like that place a lot.
Yeah, it's a fantastic old house, and they take real good care of it.
For sure,
Oh,
for
yeah.
sure. Well,
Since there's stuff that goes up on that website every week, I just got to keep checking.
Yep. Every Thursday is usually the day. So usually Thursday around noon, we'll have a brand new article every week.
Nice.
Well, Mitch, if for some reason people aren't following your social media and they're following us for whatever reason, where can they find all of the Haunted US stuff?
Absolutely, yeah. Haunted US can be found, of course, at hauntedus.com. And then we have our Facebook page, Haunted US. Just look for the green background. It's pretty much green logo, green everything. And Facebook, yep. Twitter, X, whatever you call it these days, at Haunted US. Blue Sky. Their usernames are very strange, and I don't really remember how they work. But it's pretty much at Haunted US. It's haunkedus.bksy. something.
Yeah, something like that.
Quite odd, but yeah, but it's at Haunted US. If you look up Haunted US on Blue Sky, you can find us. YouTube, we have our YouTube channel started pretty much when the podcast did. So you can find Haunted US on YouTube as well. And I think there's a Pinterest account floating out there that by Haunted US, if folks are still on Pinterest, and of course Instagram.
Start putting the pins in.
Yes. And when we decide to expand beyond our Pinterest horizons, we also post on Instagram. Lots of amazing photos that we get along in the way. And yeah, we keep everything up to date there. And of course, when we do release a new article every week, we have image posts that we put up on Instagram. So if you're looking for lots of spooky, eerie images on your timeline, along with updates on when new content comes out on our website, Instagram's the place to go. Haunted US.
Sweet.
Did you by chance want to let people know where they could get your books, since you are an author and you have a couple books out?
Yeah, you can find me on Amazon, Mitch Goth, MITCHGOTH. Nothing that has to do with ghosts or hauntings yet, but that's poised to change here pretty soon. So folks can find my author page on Amazon, and they actually allow you to follow authors on there now. So you can get a little email from Amazon whenever anything new comes out.
I feel like if people like the paranormal, they gotta like crime and thriller.
You would think that's probably a pretty close.
Especially because you have like the perfect author name for something like thriller.
Yeah, right?
Mitch Goth.
Yeah.
Thriller novelist.
Exactly. Yeah. It just makes sense.
Well, Mitch, thank you so much for being on the show. That was really a lot of good information to hear, and I really appreciate you I don't know, answering the more deeper questions, quote unquote, that I threw out there.
Yeah.
And Taylor, any last thoughts before we wrap it up?
Just thank you for being on the podcast, and I'm really excited that you accepted like the invite and
absolutely
joining us and talking.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm always excited to talk with folks about the paranormal and anything ghostly or spooky. It's pretty much one of my favorite things ever, is talking to people about ghost stories, hearing people's ghost stories, and essentially just talking paranormal things. And I love being able to do it out in the field, working for Haunted US, and I love being able to do it here with dedicated folks who bring the spooky stuff to people's airwaves all the time. So thank you for doing what you do, and thanks for having me.
Well, thank you guys so much for watching or listening on your podcast catcher of choice. If you have a ghost story that you want to tell Taylor and I, you can email us at ghostandus@gmail.com. We can schedule a time to get you on the podcast. Or if you don't feel comfortable about being on camera, you feel free to type it out. If you want us to use a pseudonym, perfectly acceptable, not a big deal. We can read your story out loud and get it out to listeners and viewers and get more attention to people who might have had similar situations.
We can have me butcher your names.
Yeah. Taylor's really good at names. So But if you're not following us on social media, you can follow us everywhere at Ghosts in Us. It's that simple, at Ghosts in Us. And if you're not, you should subscribe to our YouTube channel because we have a ton of content coming your way. At the time of recording, we don't have any investigation videos planned for this month, but that's always subject to change because we are just backlogging the absolute crap out of this stuff. So stay tuned because you never know what just might pop up in your feed. You can like, comment, and subscribe, and don't forget to ding that notification bell because then you'll get alerted when we upload something. And thank you again, and we'll see you in the next one.